Long story short, my neighbor will call the police if any leaves from my tree or any grass blades from me cutting my grass go into her yard. Yes, she does stand out there and watch me while I cut grass. Last week we talked to one another with a police officer present so we could try and work things out. Basically, the moment she sees a leaf in her yard, she gets pissed. I told her I'm not home all the time to constantly monitor every single leaf that falls from my tree. Oh, did I mention the tree's on the opposite side of the yard from her? My yard is not littered with leaves or something, and the police even said that my yard looks fine. But she persists on calling the police out every time anything comes into her yard. So I've done my research on the situation, and as dumb as I think it is, but once a leaf falls from a tree, I'm not liable for what happens to it. And that's what the internet articles say, at least. Could anybody produce any sort of Pennsylvania legislation that tells me that leaves falling from a tree is not a crime? I can't believe I'm even here asking this, but I'm getting really sick of the police coming out for everything I do outside. I just want to present it to the police and the neighbor so it stops. A few months later, I was out back after dark. It was no later than 8 p.m. I was just breaking down some boxes that we still had left over from moving. I took a quick break from breaking them down, and I see this hand throwing trash into my yard over the fence that separates our yards. I just couldn't believe it. Up until this point, we had one interaction with another, and that was when we were both outside shoveling snow. I introduced myself, she introduced herself, and immediately warned me that she loves to call the police on anything that she sees wrong in the neighborhood, basically bragging about it. From that greeting to the trash being thrown over my yard, no interactions with one another. I bought a security cam system shortly after to see just exactly how she does it. We had bits and pieces of trash in our backyard shortly after moving in, and it was always on the side of the yard that was up against her fence. We just thought that it was whatever trash that the wind picked up and wouldn't stop at the fence. And we would pick it up whenever we would see it. Not a big deal. Within 3 days of having the cameras, I saw she was doing it again, and it's on camera. I waited for it to happen on 3 more occasions, but after the second time I had it on video, anytime I saw her outside. When I was outside, I tried to say hello and talk to her about it. But as soon as I said hello, she would go inside. After the 3rd time of throwing trash into my yard and being unsuccessful at talking to her about it, I called the police. There was no reason for her to be throwing trash into my yard. The police gave her a warning. The trash in our backyard that we thought had been blown there stopped as well. Crazy. After that, I had been nothing but nice to her and would say hello whenever I saw her. I really don't want to have problems, but I had to do something about the trash being thrown into our yard. Anytime I would say hello, though, I would get ignored. She even went so far as to say she was going to charge me with harassment if I didn't stop, saying hello? Last week, the police came out once again for leaves in her yard. He suggested that we talk to one another while he was there to listen. She explained herself. She thinks that we are not maintaining our property well enough and is upset that we aren't outside to pick up every leaf that falls from our tree and doesn't want any grass clippings blowing into her yard. The police officer looked at my yard and looked back at her and said there's nothing wrong with it. Actually, his yard looks better than a lot of properties in our city. She said she bought a house that doesn't have a tree because she doesn't want to clean up any leaves. Newsflash, every house on the block has a tree except for hers. She just wishes that we would take care of our yard better. Again, the police officer told her that according to the city law, our yard was fine. We agreed with each other that if we had any problems with one another, that we would talk to each other first before getting the police involved. 8 days later, she called the police again for grass and leaves being in her yard. As far as I could tell, there wasn't any grass left behind, and when I mean in her yard, I'm not saying it's in the middle of her yard. It's mere inches from where our yard meets her yard. She had been nothing but a headache since we moved in, and it's only getting worse. I've done nothing to her other than make sure that she stopped throwing trash in my yard. I mean, why did she do that anyway? I still don't know.